Hello, today I'm out here in the woods exploring nature with Fraley. I haven't really done this in a while because I've been pretty busy, but it's good to get back out there again. So I missed already most of fall, but it's still late fall, so there's plenty of stuff. This time of year, a lot of the animals are preparing for winter. They're going into hibernation. You know, they're dying off and maybe leaving one little piece of their life cycle, like the eggs or the larvae are going to stay over winter and repopulate or stuff like that. So as far as animals go, there's not too many. I actually saw a water snake the other day on the sidewalk. I wasn't able to take any pictures or videos of it, but yeah, that's probably going to be my last snake of the year. I wasn't expecting to see one that late in the year. There's not going to be a lot of insects buzzing around anymore. They are out here though. They do live over the winter, some of them. And you will find them if you look in the right places, as I'm about to show you. But other than that, it's a very good time of year for mushrooms, because as you can see, all the leaves are going on the ground. That makes some really good food for mushrooms. There's a lot of mushrooms that sprout during this time of year, and some that only sprout during this time of year. So let's go see what we could find out there. I think I've made a video before on witch's butter, in which case it was a type of jelly fungus that was growing on a log that was black in color. That's what a more older specimen of witch's butter looks like. But this is what it looks like when it's younger. It's orangish yellow, and a little bit more on the underside. So it's the same thing, but just a different age. So when this grows up, it's going to turn black. And it is edible. A lot of people don't really like it, but I like it. Not a lot of it here though. So this is another form of witch's butter. Over here we've got these ball-shaped mushrooms. You can see those little dots on the skin. And they're growing on wood as opposed to out of the ground like most puffballs do. So this one is called a stump puffball. And they're typically edible if you get them at the right stage. So the way you can tell is if you rip it open and it's still white inside. So this one looks old. This is probably not even going to be white. So let's just use this as a test run. Yep, you can see that it turned green. So the white flesh is still developing, and this is a little bit more mature. It's turning into spores now. It's not quite spores. It's this little slimy green stuff. But yeah, that's not edible. That's not going to taste good. They're developing into spores. But if we open it and it was white, let's see if maybe this smaller one would be less mature. Yep, this is what an edible puffball mushroom looks like. The flesh is still white on the inside. But I'm not going to eat this one because it's kind of small and there's not enough. But yeah, it's a puffball mushroom. And eventually this thing will fill with spores. And a little hole will poke through the top here. And the spores will be brown or green. And they'll just puff out like a puffball. That's why they call it that. Over here we got these mushrooms growing onto the log. They look like little bracket, half moon fungi. But they're actually gill mushrooms. These, if you remember previously, I made a video about something called the tiger sawgill. That's Lentinus tigris. This one is a related mushroom called Lentinus ursinus. So instead of the tiger sawgill, you might call it the bear sawgill. I don't think that's actually what it's called. I don't think it has a common name, but that's basically what it means. So if I take this one off, it's got like a white cap. These ones are old. It has like a white cap with brown and towards the base of where it is. And then the underside has got these gills that are supposed to be white, but these ones got old. And the reason why they would call it a sawgill, you can't see it on the tiger sawgill because, as I showed you, the gills look all mangled. But if you look at the edge of these gills, that are pretty normal gills, you can see they're a little bit rough or a little bit jagged like a saw. So that's why they would call it a sawgill. So yeah, this is Lentinus ursinus. Over here I found something which, looking at it, makes me wish I'd come here just a few days earlier. Look at this thing covered in mold. It's all old. But this, if it was new, it would have like, this kind of ruffled thing of mushrooms. It would be gray. It turned green because of the mold. Those are the spores of the mold that are on it. And then on the underside, look at that. You can see some beautiful hyphae of the mold. That's really cool. But anyways, it will be having white gills on the underside. Oh, here we go. These little beetles over here. They're a type of insect that I always see on mushrooms is the rove beetles, the young rove beetles. They like mushrooms. But anyways, this is an old hen of the woods, which is a very good edible mushroom. So yeah, I would have a white underside with little small pores on it. So if I'd come here a few days earlier, then I would have had some hen of the woods to take home, but this one's all rotten. Over here you can see there's a bunch of little mushrooms that are grayish brown with a little dimple in the center, making them kind of cup shaped. These are mushrooms belong to the species the genus Arrhenia. I don't know exactly which species, but they have whitish gills and produce white spores. And the stem is pretty much the same color as the cap. Then it makes a little fuzzy ring around the spot where it grows. And the cool thing about these guys is that, well, they grow on wood, but they're always growing with moss because moss and Arrhenia mushrooms have a symbiotic relationship. So I believe they get like nutrients from each other, or I don't know exactly what their relationship is, but they all will always grow together. Over here under this log, there's this bright red crust fungus called the Hydnophlebia chrysorhiza. So this is another name is the yellow spreading tooth. It has sort of polypore and a crust fungus, so it grows as a flat surface and has little teeth that come out from and spread the spores that are reddish brown to yellow colored, and they are gonna spread the spores. This is what their fruiting body looks like. And in the next clip, you can see the actual hyphae, which are really cool because they're orange in color. That's another way to identify it. This fruiting body looks very distinct. It's bright red, but also that bright orange hyphae is a characteristic of that. And this is some more of the fruiting body of the Hydnophlebia chrysorhiza that is more yellowish and less bright red. You may wonder what happens to wasps and hornets over the winter. You see their nests all around, but they're usually empty. What happens is all the workers die, and the queen finds a safe place to hide, like right here, this little hole she dug for herself, under this log. And she's just going to sleep here all winter long. This is a queen bald-faced hornet. So luckily it's cold outside and she's really tired, otherwise she'd probably be pretty mad at me right now. But she's just going to hibernate over the winter, and once spring comes around, she's going to lay more eggs. If a hornet lays eggs, or a wasp, they're called hornets, but they're actually wasps. If they lay an unfertilized egg, it will turn out to be a male. And then she could use a sperm to make a fertilized egg, and that will be a female, which will produce worker ants. So she's going to build a whole new nest in the spring and build a whole new colony. Here's another example of what insects do over the winter. I believe that these are sweat bees. They could also be cuckoo wasps. I didn't get that good of an image, so I don't know. The reason why I think they're sweat bees, though, is because they're living in a group. And cuckoo wasps do not live in groups. But anyways, these guys are just staying in their nest that they had already. And they're just going to sleep there. So they're not going to die off like the bald-faced hornet does. There's a whole bunch of them in here. There's 3 in this scene, and then if you look on the actual log, there's a whole bunch of them living in their holes. So that's the nest that they built for themselves by burrowing holes all into the wood, and they're gonna keep it. They're not gonna make a new one next year, and the whole family is gonna stay together. So You can see there's a whole bunch of them living in there like apartment complexes. And I'm fortunate that it's fall, because if I had happened upon this in the summertime, these guys probably wouldn't be too happy, and me and Braley probably wouldn't be too happy either to have stumbled upon their nest. So these are sweat bees. Under this log, we have these small little cup fungus, which belongs to the species. Sorry, it belongs to the genus Chlorosplenium. So, chloro means green. You can see that these cups are ranging from a greenish to a yellowish color, which is characteristic of these. So you see a bunch of different these colors. And this is a type of ascomycete once again. So there's little tiny sacs inside of these cups that kind of explode and release spores that are carried away by the wind. So that's Chlorosplenium. Alright, over here we've got this very fertile log. As you can already see, there's some mushrooms growing on it. These are, brown on top with a little bit of white around the edges and little striations running out and a bump on top. And then if you look under at the gills, they're white, and they would produce white spores if I did a spore print. And another thing that is a key characteristic of this, I don't know if this lens is good enough to pick up on it, but in between the gills are these little wrinkles. That is a common characteristic of mushrooms from the genus Mycena. These are the common bonnet mushrooms going off of this log. But there's more than meets the eye. If I turn it over, once Rayleigh comes off of here. Here, hang on. The fruiting body is what we can typically see, just sticking out of here. But as we know, that is not, hang on, Brady, it is not the main part of the mushroom. It's actually below the surface. So all along here, you can see the mycelium of the mushroom. These might belong to the bonnet mushrooms or something else, because as we can see, there's a ton of stuff growing over here. We got the cups from earlier, and then this is something called the trembling crust, which is a type of polypore that forms a crust around here. The Mycena again, and this is another type of fungus. I don't know what it is. All of that could be what these mycelia are. These are all fruiting bodies that I've showed you, and this is the actual body of the mushroom. That's like I picked a mushroom earlier, that didn't harm it. This is what is actually, growing through this wood, and then it produces digestive enzymes to digest the wood, and then it eats the wood, basically. So, unlike us, we put things in our body and then digest them. They digest things and then put them in their body. So, some other things living on this log. Of course, we got a nice little family of ants. They have their eggs there. And then this guy over here, I see these a lot. This is the larva of a fire-colored beetle, which, funny enough, I see their larvae all the time, but I never actually see the beetle. These fire-colored beetle larvae live under the log because they feed on the dead wood in the log, so that's why you always find them under logs. And then over here, coming back to the mycelia, you can see that there's little droplets coming out of them. That's if there's too much water, like we have a bunch of snow that melted earlier, then they'll secrete the extra water along with waste products. And this over here is a type of jelly fungus that belongs to the genus Dacryopinax. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what species, but that's the genus. And the way I think of it is like it's kind of a mixture between a coral fungus and a jelly fungus. That's the kind of texture that it has, in my opinion. And then we turn over this other log, some nice mycelium action, as well as this brown crust fungus that I found.
I'm not exactly sure which type it is because I'm not very well versed in crust fungus, but there's another type of thing that you can find under these fertile logs. All kinds of life. And then over here, you see this capped mushroom. It is multicolored and it has kind of a yellowish purplish color. This is a type of mushroom called Russula vesca. The genus Russula, a common name for it is a brittle stem, which you can't exactly see on the screen, but it has a very brittle stem as I'm holding it in my hand. And I attempted to break open the stem to show how thin the flesh is in it and hollow it is. I don't know if you can see it very well, but that's a characteristic of russulas. When you hold it in your hand, you can feel that the stem is very brittle and fragile. And the multicolored cap, that specific appearance, is that it's a Russula vesca.
As I mentioned before, fall is a great time to find mushrooms because they grow out of the ground. The leaves make a fertile surface for them, so there's plenty of these mushrooms growing out of the ground. This one, at first glance, it looks like an ink cap. The way that it's kind of, you can tell that it's white, but it's turned black with age, almost like it's disintegrating. And if you look at here, it's actually not growing out of the leaf litter or the wood chips on there. I'm digging in order to kind of show you that it's growing directly out of the dirt, which means that this is a mushroom that is probably feeding on decaying plant matter from dung. And as I said, it looks kind of like an ink cap, but then I look at these gills and they kind of remind me of Panaeolus gills, the way that they're black with white edges and kind of speckled. They remind me of Panaeolus gills. I'm not exactly sure. And the other thing that tells me that this probably isn't an ink cap is when I rub the bottom of it. It doesn't really leave ink on me. It just has those dark brown spores that Panaeolus often has. So I'm not exactly sure what kind of mushroom this is. It's kind of ambiguous to me. So if anyone knows what they are, then or has any ideas, then let me know. There's also another type of mushroom growing here. These ones are brown. They're orange, like more brown towards the center, and convex, kind of flat. And as I'm trying to show here, these ones are growing on the leaf litter and the wood chips that are on the ground. And they kind of have like a curly stem. And also these scales that are the same color as the rest of the flesh. And they attach to the stem. So I believe that this is a mushroom called a scurfy twiglet or Tubaria furfuracea. These are pretty common. And based on the fact that it grows on the wood chips kind of at the bottom of the forest floor, can kind of tell you that this is one of those mushrooms that does grow well in the fall because of all the leaves adding nutrients. And here's a younger specimen. The scurfy twiglet gets his name from the fact that the cap is scaly when it's young. And so, these are some younger specimens. You can see little fine hairs on it, and it looks scaly. So these are the same thing, but they're smaller. You can see some little veil remnants on the cap too. So they're more scaly, which is where they get their name from.